We're involved in a series of votes today, so there'll be a lot of back and forth. They're supposedly 10-minute votes, but I would advise the witnesses, if St. Peter ever says to you, you have 10 minutes to live, you should respond, I'd like it to be during a 10-minute Senate vote, because that'll give you a lot more time. Let me thank you, the witnesses, for agreeing to appear today before our Strategic Forces Subcommittee. Thank you all for your service. The purpose of today's hearing is to examine the processes and procedures of how the Nuclear Weapons Council coordinates Department of Defense requirements for nuclear weapons with the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration and their budgets. We have as witnesses the principals of the Nuclear Weapons Council, except for the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy. This hearing is a historic one, tracing its roots to actions that occurred 76 years ago and reflective of tensions that exist between the manufacture and utilization of nuclear weapons. The Nuclear Weapons Council once was called the Military Liaison Committee, and it was established in the 1946 Atomic Energy Act after the Manhattan Project was disestablished. The committee was a result of an amendment to the 1946 Act by Senator Vandenberg of Michigan, who, after a much heated debate on the civilian versus military control of nuclear weapons, at the time consisted of 9 such weapons, by the way, in our entire stockpile. Senator Vandenberg referred to this debate as a tempest in a teapot. I would note that Senator Vandenberg worked with President Truman to form NATO and the Marshall Plan, and is quoted as stating that partisan politics should stop at the water's edge. Senator Vandenberg's portrait hangs in the reception room to our Senate chamber. Section 2C of the 1946 Act authorized the Military Liaison Committee to be staffed with representatives of the War Department and the Navy. It directed the civilian commissioners of the Atomic Energy Commission to advise and consult with the committee on all atomic energy matters which the committee deems to relate to the military applications and the manufacture or utilization of atomic weapons. The provision then goes on to state that if the committee at any time concludes that any action, proposed action, or failure to act of the Commission on such matters is adverse to the responsibility of the Departments of War or Navy, the committee may refer such action or proposed action to the Secretaries of the War or Navy. If the Secretary concurs, they may refer to such action to the President, whose decision shall be final. Amazingly, that debate, which Senator Vandenberg referred to as a tempest in a teapot, still occurs today. The Military Liaison Committee was renamed the Nuclear Weapons Council after the 1986 Blue Ribbon Task Force on Nuclear Weapons Management found that the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy should be coordinating more tightly on nuclear weapons programs and budgets. I'm hopeful that today we can examine the relationship between the Department of Defense and the NNSA and how requirements and budgets are coordinated. And we keep in mind that the debate that occurred in 1946 really revolves around the civil-military control of nuclear weapons. It is an important and healthy tension, but one we must respect as fundamental to our laws and Constitution. We've just finished another nuclear posture review. Russia is making reckless statements about nuclear use, and the NNSA is executing its highest workload since the 1980s as we rebuild our aging triad. Now more than ever, we need the Department of Defense and the NNSA to closely coordinate in a unified way their requirements and budgets so that our nuclear deterrent continues to be, as Secretary Ash Carter described it, the backbone of every national security action we undertake today. Again, let me thank today's witnesses for you all agreeing to appear, and after brief opening statements, we will have rounds of 5-minute questions to the witnesses. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will keep my statement short so that we can save time for more questions. First of all, welcome to all of our witnesses. We appreciate the effort it took to align your schedules and appear before us today. I'm sorry that Secretary Call couldn't be with us, but Dr. Plum, we're glad to have you here. Thank you. I also want to thank the staff, John Epstein in particular, for their effort to bring this hearing together. We have before us today the most senior panel that I can recall ever appearing before this subcommittee, and we look forward to your testimony and about the Nuclear Weapons Council's work to ensure our deterrent remains safe, secure, effective, and credible as the geopolitical landscape becomes less stable and nuclear threats increase. I remain concerned that we are not doing enough and that we continue to accept greater risk in our policies, plans, and programs. Russia's increasingly overt nuclear threats should remind all of us of the importance of nuclear deterrence and the risk of deterrence failure. This is the Department of Defense's most important mission, and we must ensure it has the capabilities and resources necessary to succeed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Ms. Ruby, if you would begin.
Chairman Reed, Chairman King, Ranking Member Fisher, and members of the subcommittee, it's my pleasure to be here today with my colleagues from the Nuclear Weapons Council. The Nuclear Weapons Council serves an indispensable coordination role between NNSA and DoD for the design, development, testing, and production of U.S. nuclear weapons and delivery systems. It also serves a critical role for anticipating future needs and managing priorities and risks. The biggest challenge NNSA faces today is conducting 5 stockpile modernization programs while simultaneously revitalizing our infrastructure. NNSA is fully committed to executing programs as efficiently and quickly as possible while managing risks. However, the risk will persist until we complete the enterprise recapitalization efforts. Steady progress is being made. The W-88 ALT-370 and the B-6112 are on track to meet DoD operational schedule. NNSA is also developing the modernized W-80-4, W-87-1, and W-93 in partnership with DoD. I am proud of how well NNSA is working with the Navy, Air Force, U.S. STRATCOM, and the Nuclear Weapons Council during this demanding time. The 2022 Nuclear Posture Review laid out some clear initiatives that impact the NNSA. We are committed to implementing production-based resilience and warhead science and technology innovation. We are also diligently working to recruit, develop, and retain our workforce. Lastly, I would be remiss if I didn't mention NNSA's equally strong commitment to our responsibilities to promote nonproliferation, reduce nuclear risk, and enhance counterterrorism and counterproliferation efforts. We appreciate your sustained bipartisan support. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Admiral Richards.
Chairman Reed, Chairman King, Ranking Member Fisher, distinguished committee members, it's a pleasure to be here again as the operational commander responsible for our nation's nuclear forces and being able to testify beside my Nuclear Weapons Council colleagues. Given Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine, I will have to limit my responses in this unclassified forum. Let me begin with this observation. We are facing crisis deterrence dynamics right now that we have only seen a few times in our nation's history. When I testified to this committee in March, I expressed concern regarding 3-party deterrence dynamics that we face today. The nation and our allies have not faced a crisis like Russia's invasion of Ukraine in over 30 years. President Putin simultaneously invaded a sovereign nation while using thinly veiled nuclear threats to deter U.S. and NATO intervention. The PRC is watching the war in Ukraine closely and will likely use nuclear coercion to their advantage in the future. Their intent is to achieve the military capability to reunify Taiwan by 2027, if not sooner. STRATCOM has been preparing for this class of threat for years, developing theoretical deterrence concepts and putting them into action. Yet my ability to maintain strategic deterrence is limited. As stated in my fiscal year 2023 unfunded priorities memo, the war in Ukraine and China's nuclear trajectory, their strategic breakout, demonstrates that we have a deterrence and assurance gap against the threat of limited nuclear employment. To help close this gap, pursuing a low-yield, non-ballistic capability that does not require visible generation should be re-examined, in my opinion, in the near future, along with other measures to address this. Weapons program delays have driven us past the point where it is possible to fully mitigate operational risks. In some cases, we're simply left to assess the damage to our deterrent. Further programmatic delays, budget shortfalls, or policy decisions to lower operational requirements to meet infrastructure capacity will result in operational consequences. However, the Nuclear Weapons Council, I believe, is well positioned to assess and meet these challenges. I applaud my Secretary, Secretary Austin's Integrated Deterrence Initiative to confront the three-party deterrence dynamic. However, I ask us not to forget that the foundation of the nation's integrated deterrent is a safe, secure, and effective nuclear enterprise. Without this foundation, integrated deterrence simply doesn't work. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. Mr. LaPlante.
Thank you, Chairman King, and also Ranking Member Fisher, and thanks to my colleagues here from the Nuclear Weapons Council for this really important subject. And it was very daunting to hear the history and the provenance of this very committee. Thank you, Senator. Nuclear deterrence, as has been said, is the top priority and is the backbone of everything we have. It's the backbone of every operational plan the Department of Defense has, as was pointed out by others. And for over 60 years, the bedrock of that, of course, has been the triad, and we need it to be with us for many decades to come. And as the Admiral just said, we have pushed the modernization of those platforms and those capabilities as long as we can. So in addition to having the 5 programs that the Administrator just talked about, the 5 programs of the stockpile that are being modernized, we are modernizing or recapitalizing 3 legs of the triad at the same time. As you all know, Columbia-class, SSBN, the B-21 bomber, and the GBSD ICBM replacement. So we're doing a lot right now because we have to, in many ways, because we've waited to do this as a country. So if there ever was a need for a Nuclear Weapons Council, I would think it would be today and with these colleagues here. As you know, they play a critical and unique role in the deterrence mission and have all the purpose that the chairman mentioned in his opening remarks. It is a joint DoD and NSA forum, and it's designed to facilitate priorities, to make sure we're going across these seams and understanding the interdependencies, which are many, between all these different pieces. So this is as time as much as anything else for this to happen. And I welcome the transparency and the strong commitment that colleagues at the Department of Energy, as well as the Administrator Ruby, have given us. We had our first, at least for me, my first session I chaired yesterday, and I can tell you we are all on the same page. We are all on the same page. So as was mentioned, the NPR is out. We now know what our guidance is to do. We have to get on and execute. And so that's our challenge. And a lot of this also, the backdrop is reconstituting capabilities and a workforce that has atrophied. These systems that are being modernized or recapitalized, the workforce we're using to do it is largely a workforce that was not there when their predecessor systems, when we have today, were built. So this is really a big challenge for us. And I look forward to engaging with this committee and with the Nuclear Weapons Council. So thank you.
Thank you for your chairmanship of this, of the council. I just want to state for the record that this hearing was planned in January, before the invasion of Ukraine, and I don't want anyone to interpret this hearing as somehow nuclear saber rattling on behalf of the United States. This is a hearing that this subcommittee felt was important, but it is not related to the events in Ukraine in any specific way. I think it's important to make that point. Ms. Shyu, please.
See. Sorry. Chairman King, can you hear me?
Yep. Yes. Okay. Please get.
Thank you. Okay. Chairman King, Ranking Member Fisher.
A little closer to the.
Chairman King, Ranking Member Fisher, and subcommittee members, thank you for inviting us to provide testimony for the Senate Armed Services Committee hearing on the Nuclear Weapons Council's activities to sustain and modernize the U.S. nuclear deterrent. I'm honored and proud to be seated beside my other distinguished council members and to represent all of the incredible military, civilian, laboratory, and contractor personnel that carry out the work of ensuring our nation sustains a safe, secure, reliable, and effective nuclear deterrent. The Office of Undersecretary of Defense for Research and Engineering is responsible for the Department of Defense's National Defense Science and Technology Strategy, including the Department's nuclear weapon modernization activities. We share the responsibility of ensuring an enduring scientific and technological advantage with the nation's nuclear enterprise with the National Nuclear Security Administration. Together, we're tasked with creating innovative ways to ensure that the modernization of the nuclear triad achieves strategic deterrence during a period of rapidly evolving threats. A month ago, I testified before the Senate Armed Services Committee Subcommittee on Emerging Threats and Capabilities on how I am working to accelerate innovation for the warfighter. This mission has never been more important than it is today and applies as much to our nuclear forces as it does to our conventional forces. Strategic competitors of the United States are rapidly developing their nuclear arsenal in new and novel ways with a clear intent of increasing their reliance on these weapons in their security strategies. The United States must not allow ourselves to be taken by technological surprise, and we must have the technological resilience to anticipate and rapidly respond to emerging threats. We have a solemn responsibility to ensure that we replace our nuclear delivery systems and platforms in both a timely and cost-effective manner. My job is to make sure that we bring the best technological innovation to the nation has to offer. This includes leveraging emerging technologies and advanced manufacturing methods, making wise investments in the defense industrial base, ensuring the integrity of our supply chains, and increasing focus on exquisite modeling and simulation, rapid prototyping, and demonstration capabilities. I have also set for the department 14 critical technology areas vital to maintaining our military's technological advantage, some of which specifically applies to the nuclear enterprise, such as areas surrounding microelectronics, advanced materials, quantum science, advanced computing and software, and integrated network systems and systems. The Department of Defense is also committed to investing and retaining a highly skilled nuclear science and technology workforce. This is the enduring means by which we ensure the long-term viability of our nation's nuclear deterrent. These are the current ways my office is contributing to the Nuclear Weapons Council activities and will work towards implementing nuclear policy objectives, including supporting the modernization of the nuclear triad. Thank you for the invitation to testify before this committee. I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. John Plum, Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy.
Thank you, Senator King. Chairman Reed, Chairman King, Ranking Member Fisher, members of the subcommittee, I am also honored to testify here today with my colleagues on the Nuclear Weapons Council, where I'm proud to represent policy for most meetings. In my role as Assistant Secretary of Defense, I am responsible for nuclear weapons policy, and so I thought today it would be appropriate to use my brief time to discuss the 2022 Nuclear Posture Review. The Department completed its review of nuclear posture earlier this year in close consultation with the interagency, outside experts, allies, and partners. The NPR represents a comprehensive, balanced approach to U.S. nuclear strategy, policy, posture, and forces. And as Admiral Richard said, maintaining a safe, secure, and effective nuclear deterrent, as well as a strong and credible extended deterrence commitment, remains the top priority for the Department. And this top priority is further reinforced by Russia's invasion of and nuclear rhetoric regarding Ukraine and by China's rapid nuclear modernization and expansion. Committed to that priority, the President's FY23 budget request includes $34.4 billion for the nuclear enterprise. This includes fully supporting the modernization of the triad, modernizing our nuclear security infrastructure, and investments in our NC3, Nuclear Command, Control, and Communications Architecture. Now, that $34.4 billion is nearly $7 billion more than the FY22 request. It includes funding for the B-21 bomber and the LRSO for the air leg, GBSD for the ground leg, and the Columbia SSBN and the Trident II life extension for the sea leg. Now, at the same time, and after considering all viewpoints, the NPR concluded that the SLCM should be canceled and the B-83 Tech 1 should be retired. The NPR underscores the U.S. commitment to reducing the role of nuclear weapons and reestablishing our leadership in arms control. We will continue to emphasize strategic stability, seek to avoid costly arms races, and facilitate risk reduction and arms control arrangements where possible. Our nuclear forces remain the bedrock of our deterrence architecture. They are foundational to every defense priority established in the National Defense Strategy, and they remain indispensable to our national security. It's my honor to work with the Nuclear Weapons Council and the Congress and this committee on these issues. Thank you, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, sir. Final witness, Admiral Christopher Grady, Vice Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Admiral Grady.
Chairman Reed, Chairman King, Ranking Member Fisher, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to testify today with my colleagues. For 78 years, since the end of World War II, democratic institutions and the rules-based order have prevented great power war. Since the advent of the nuclear age, our nuclear deterrent has served a vital purpose in a U.S. national security strategy and continues to be an essential part of our strategy to preserve peace and stability by deterring aggression against the United States, our allies, and our partners. However, today we face a complex global threat environment characterized by increasingly sophisticated and militarily capable strategic competitors who intend to fundamentally change the rules-based order. And this, of course, is recently evidenced by an unprovoked and unnecessary war of aggression by Russia. Since the Manhattan Project, the partnership between the national laboratories, production facilities, and our respective departments has provided us with the cornerstone of our security, the nuclear deterrent. And these relationships are evolving and growing stronger as we transition from maintaining legacy systems to producing modern capabilities. This is why the 2022 National Defense Strategy and Nuclear Posture Review reinforces our commitment to modernize the triad. As the subcommittee conducts its crucial oversight on this important topic, there are three areas that I recommend require focused leadership. First, everything we do should start with the threat, and the threat is moving fast, and the joint force requires capabilities that give us the ability to deter and respond at the time and place of our choosing. Next, we must accelerate how we buy, develop, experiment, and field modern capabilities, particularly how we manage the Phase X process. Moving at the speed of relevance is not a nice-to-have, it is a must-have, but many of our processes and our products are products of the industrial age. We also require timely and predictable funding to achieve modernization, and our activities are highly interdependent, and funding gaps disrupt our ability to deliver, and I appreciate the support of the committee to that end. In closing, I thank the subcommittee for its leadership and commitment to the nuclear deterrence mission and all of our service members, and I look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Admiral. Thanks to all of our witnesses. We'll do 5-minute rounds as per the committee's custom. Let me begin. Mr. LaPlante, you're the chair. The most general question is, how is it working? We've had problems in the past. There have been, as you know, some controversy over the last several years. Do you feel that the budget process this year between NNSA and the Department of Defense worked as it should? Was it vigorous but smooth?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it's my understanding, and I've done a lot of talking in my last couple of weeks and listening to a lot of my colleagues, and including on this group, that it was quite thorough and robust, the work of the NWC in reviewing the budget. And in fact, it was chaired by my colleague who's actually here behind me, Honorable Rosenblum. And it was very thorough and complete and went through, I don't know, several months of it and seemed to end up in a place where I think people felt pretty comfortable that we had looked at things with a good degree of fidelity and of course concluded the adequacy of what we were trying to do, but also agreed with the NNSA conclusion about the getting to 80 pits per year by 2030 as not being, at least as of today, appears to be possible. So it appears, and again, as I mentioned in my opening remarks, I chaired my first meeting yesterday, and I could just say from that meeting, but who knows? It was we all are on the same page. I would say. I mean, we're also struck by the enormity of what we have to do. I mean, again, we don't have time to bicker, and we don't have time to go into silos now. We just don't have the time. And everything is so independent.
It's really a triad of modernization. It's the triad, the delivery. We're modernizing all three legs. We're modernizing the weapon system, but we're also modernizing the facilities themselves at NNSA, which I've been to Los Alamos, and I think there's some facilities that date back to the Manhattan Project. So it's a massive undertaking. Admiral Richard, you touched on this, I think, in your testimony, and we're talking about deterrence. The budget defunds the Sea-Launched Cruise Missile. And my question is, do we have a deterrent capability below the level of a massive response? And if not, isn't that a gap in our deterrent capacity?
We do have a deterrent capability, and you're talking about a class of deterrence challenge that STRATCOM has been working on since 2015. How do you deter limited employment? Nuclear posture review, very thorough review. I think as y'all have seen, this is an excellent strategy that has resulted. But I think it's incumbent upon us to learn lessons as we go along, as the threat changes, both China's strategic breakout and what we're learning in real time in the crisis inside Ukraine. And so not all of your triad is available all of the time. Day to day, we have a dyad. And so the question becomes, as we go forward, what changes, capability and capacity and posture do we need to have to better deter the threats we face? And I do submit that that is a question we need to be looking at, and based on what we're learning from the Ukraine crisis, the deterrence and assurance gap, it's important not to leave that out. A non-ballistic, low-yield, non-treaty accountable system that is available without visible generation would be very valuable.
And we don't have that today, is that correct?
That's correct.
A different question on deterrence. One of the things that keeps me up at night is non-state actors getting a hold of nuclear weapons. And Ms. Ruby, I know that part of your list of things to do is non-proliferation. The problem with terrorists having a nuclear weapon is that deterrence doesn't work with them. They don't care too much about dying, and they don't have a capital city to be worried about. And I just commend to all of you, and perhaps I can submit this question for the record, particularly you, Admiral Richard. I'd like some thinking about how we deter, how do we deal with the risk of a proliferation of nuclear weapons to a terrorist, to non-state actors, for whom the theory of deterrence doesn't really apply. Final question, quick question, and Ms. Ruby, you may want to talk about this later. Savannah River, 80 pits a year. It doesn't look like we're going to make it. Is there a plan to accelerate that process and get a better handle on costs?
Yeah, the Savannah River Pit Production Facility would make 50 pits per year to allow us, as a country, combined with the Los Alamos, 30 pits per year to make 80. We are moving as fast as we can on the Savannah River Pit Production Facility design. That's the phase that we're in. That design is occurring at about 75% of the time that a non-nuclear design of that same magnitude would take place. So I feel like that's accelerated. When the design is complete, we'll begin construction. When the construction is complete, we'll begin trying to make pits at rate. So we have multiple steps. We will try to accelerate each of those steps. And in fact, we are hoping to begin to do some pre-buys of long lead items to prepare for the construction phase now.
Thank you. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Admiral Richard, I'd like to ask my first question of you, and it's a repeat of what Chairman King asked. You reported to us last year in your prepared statement, you said speaking of SLCM, without this capability, adversaries may perceive an advantage at lower levels of conflict that may encourage limited nuclear use. Is that still your view?
Senator, it is.
And you believe that we have a deterrence and an assurance gap without SLCM, is that correct?
Senator, I do, and what I would add is that one of the takeaways, I think, from Ukraine is there are certain scenarios that were judged to be highly improbable that have now materialized in front of us in real life. And I think that requires us to go back and reassess some of the decisions we've made in the past.
Do you believe that the NPR that just came out recently from the administration, does that provide the department to have conversations on not just the threats that are out there, but also on the needs that this country must have to defend the homeland?
Senator, I think it does. The NPR has produced, in my opinion, a very good strategy. I think as we implement the NPR, what we have to do is take that strategy, and then as threats change, right, and I would refer to China's strategic, we don't know where China is going to wind up in capability and capacity. We're learning probabilities are different based on what we're seeing in Ukraine, and the NPR calls for that. The next step is to actually implement that process and ask ourselves what posture, what capability, what capacity do we need to execute that good strategy.
And do you feel confident that you and other members of the department and the military will be able to express those views in a very thoughtful manner and the confidence in the administration and the possibilities of looking at change?
Senator, I'm certainly asking for that.
Thank you very much. Admiral Grady, your predecessor, General Hyten, testified in support of SLCM many times. He was quoted in one of his appearances before this subcommittee. He said, "My job as a military officer is to look at the threat, understand the threat, and propose capabilities to this body to deliver to the military so that we can respond to any threat that exists. It's all about the threat." Have the threats changed, sir?
Yes, ma'am. First of all,
Would it be your best military advice to at least continue research and development on the capability that we have with SLCM?
I am aligned with the chairman on this and have been consistent with my testimony and with his in that it's all about providing the president options against a broad series of contingencies. And in this respect, then, I am in favor of continuing to assess and evaluate SLCM going forward.
Thank you, sir. Dr. Plum, welcome. In Section 1641 of the FY22 Defense Authorization Bill, there is a requirement that the department submit the analysis of alternatives conducted for the sea-launched cruise missile. When will that be submitted?
Yeah, thank you for the question. My understanding is within a matter of days. I think they're putting together the cover letter and the rest to send that AOA over here.
Okay. The Nuclear Posture Review, it estimates the total cost for the SLCM program. Can you provide us with a written breakdown of that cost estimate in the future, please?
Thank you. To the extent that it's available, again, I have not been briefed on the AOA. To the extent it's available, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Plum, maybe this is for you. Over the next 8 years, China is expected to quadruple its stockpile, and Russia's arsenal, which already exceeds our own, is also expected to grow further. While this NPR recommends continuing the replacement of our aging delivery systems, this essentially recapitalizes a force that's sized and configured along the lines of the 2010 New START Treaty force structure. Is this administration's view that all the developments we've seen, for example, China's crash, nuclear buildup, Russia's violation of INF Treaty, that they don't have any real impact on U.S. nuclear posture and the modernization plan initially conceived of in 2010 is sufficient?
Thanks, Senator. China's breakout, if you will, but certainly their advanced modernization of their ICBMs and their nuclear posture overall is clearly concerning. And as you well know, Russia's intent to include nuclear weapons throughout its forces almost at every level is also of concern. I would just point out two things. One, the three-body problem we're about to face here, or are facing even now, is new, and it's going to require serious consideration, and I don't think there's a single person in the administration on any side of these issues that doesn't realize that and think that this is a problem that's going to require continued introspection and review. And the second thing is, not everyone values nuclear weapons at the same level. Each country has its own approach. I think we've seen Russia's conventional forces is even weaker than certainly they imagined and than we imagined, and that explains further their over-reliance on nuclear weapons. I don't think we need to match them one for one or yield for yield to be able to deter each adversary.
The 2010 plan, though, that didn't really consider China. You know, China's buildup was after that. How would you respond to that?
I'd say you are correct. China's acceleration here is maybe thought of, but certainly not as direct of a threat to us right now. I think we are postured to deter both, but all of these things require continued reevaluation of the threat and a reevaluation of the posture. I will just, the one thing to note, of course, and this council is the place to address this, is we have a huge bow wave in modernization coming just for these things in the triad that we need. $34.4 billion is not the smallest, or not the largest number. There are larger numbers coming. We have capacity issues with NNSA as well, and so we have to take all of these realities into account as we look at this problem.
And the reality of the, one last point, the reality of the Defense Department's budget is there's a very small percentage that goes to our nuclear weapons. Isn't that true?
I believe it's 4.5% for the nuclear piece overall. The weapons piece obviously is smaller, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Fisher. Senator Reid.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I had the opportunity to speak with Administrator Ruby yesterday, and I'm trying to understand two messages we've got. One, Administrator Ruby wrote to the committee on April 12th indicating that there's an unfunded priority of $250 million to $500 million for pit production at the Savannah River site. Then on April 22nd, the Nuclear Weapons Council wrote to the committee that additional funding would not be required. Indeed, the words were funding alone will not enable it to meet pit production requirements. So at least in my mind, there appears to be a discrepancy between what NSA is saying and what the Nuclear Weapons Council is saying. So let me begin with Secretary LaPlante and then ask Administrator Ruby to comment.
Yeah, thank you, Senator, for the question. Understand the question. The Nuclear Weapons Council stands by the assessment that was provided on that I signed on April 22nd of the adequacy of the budget, as well as that no additional money will get the pits to 80 per year. And I would say this: the Nuclear Weapons Council has been tracking since the fall this potential idea and concepts of additional. Let's say early long lead items, possibilities that might help. Won't bring the pit production to 80 per year by 2030, but just will be assistance in leaning forward. We've been aware of this for some time. It was not really at a high degree of fidelity when we reviewed it, so we didn't consider it at the time. I think since then, particularly for the part, and I would also defer to my colleague as in a moment, that involved the $250 million, that were the three items, the glove boxes and the building facility, as well as the training. It appears that we have enough fidelity here that it looks like it might be sensible to do. However, we need to review it. And the plan right now is the Nuclear Weapons Council in the next few weeks, we're going to take a look at this proposal, and we'll make our comments on it and make it available both to you and to this committee. I would just say this: we really want to applaud leaning forward. So our bias is going to be leaning forward. If there are good ideas that'll continue to come up out of our colleagues in NNSA, we need to make sure we look at them, and if they're solid, we need to implement them. And this is going to be a continuous process. Subject to questions, that's my answer.
Thank you. Mr. Administrator, your letter preceded the Commission's letter. You're a member of the Commission. Do you concur with that, or do you offer additional advice?
I concur, but Senator, if you would let me try to clarify. So the Nuclear Weapons Council letter made a comment that no additional amount of money will get 80 pits per year in 2030. That's a statement I completely agree with. The request for additional money, the letter I signed out, was associated with trying to buy down risks and accelerate processes to get to get construction completed faster and to get to pit production faster, not to get to 2030. So this would still be post-2030, but it would allow us to have more confidence that we wouldn't have to stop or stall because we didn't have equipment when we were doing the construction project, and to make sure that the people are ready to make pits when they can get in the building.
Well, I would appreciate further advice and comment as you study this issue going forward. And one issue which might not be appropriate for an open session is that, we see this both agree the 2030 target is not achievable. As it goes back, we have to think about what effect it has on our nuclear deterrence, our ability to actually arm nuclear weapons. And I'm sure you are doing that, and in a classified session we can pursue that question. Thank you. I have a brief bit of time, but both for the Vice Chairman, Admiral, the proposal for the submarine-launched cruise missile would actually involve the attack submarines, am I correct?
That's correct, sir.
And was part of the analysis the effect on the operational requirements of attack submarines vis-a-vis strategic ballistic missile submarines? And did that factor into the recommendation by the Nuclear Posture Review?
Sir, since my time as the Vice Chairman, I have not studied that issue, nor have I seen that study. That's not to say it did not happen, so I would like to go back and determine whether that did happen. Now, the SLCM was validated through the JROC as a valid requirement, but as to the CONOP and how it might affect the Virginia.
Admiral Richards, very quick, as my time's running, I'm over, but do you have a quick comment?
Admiral Grady's assessment was very accurate, and I will offer that there are a wide range of CONOPs that are available to the Navy for the employment of SLCM on a nuclear-powered submarine, not necessarily the CONOP that we used for the old TLAM-N.
Thank you very much. Let me recognize Senator Cotton, please, on behalf of Senator King.
Thank you all for your appearance here today. It's good to see the entire Nuclear Weapons Council here, with one exception. The Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, Colin Call. Mr. Plum, you are filling in for Mr. Call today. Do you know why he couldn't be here?